Hello and welcome to this video on positive externalities. In this video we're going to be looking at what is meant by positive externalities and then using external benefits analysis to illustrate the concept of a positive externality. So let's have a quick reminder. Externalities are the effects of a decision by a consumer or a producer that has an impact on a third party. So externalities, always think about impacts on third parties. And if that impact is positive, is a good impact, has a benefit, we call that a positive externality. And if that impact has an overall cost, we call that a negative externality. And in this video today, we're going to be looking at the positive externalities. So positive externalities exist when what makes sense to an individual to do has a positive impact on a third party who didn't make that decision. So for example, going to university and getting a degree might make sense for you because you're going to enjoy the learning, get the benefits of that, you're going to earn more money, get the benefits of that. But can we think of any third parties who might also benefit from that? Well, actually, if you go on to get a well-paid job as a result of your degree and end up paying more tax, then the government is a third party who is benefiting from your decision. They didn't make the decision, but they're a third party who is benefiting. Let's think about your decision to treat your head for head lice. I'm not being personal here, I'm just saying if you had head lice and you treated it, that would make sense for you to do so. But can we think of any third parties who might also benefit from that? Well, actually your classmates might benefit from that as well because they've got a reduced chance of catching your head lice. Getting an operation, again, might make sense for you because it would improve your health, but could also have a positive effect perhaps on your employer because you don't take as much time off work anymore and so you're more productive and they would benefit. They're not the doctor or the patient, but they are a third party who is benefiting. Walking to work might make sense for you because you get fitter, but actually it might also have a benefit on those people who would be driving because your car's not on the road anymore and there's less congestion. Keeping bees, always a good example. You might make sense to you in terms of getting money for the honey or eating the honey yourself, but actually might also benefit, for example, a farmer because the bees can then go and pollinate his fields and her crops and therefore create a positive impact for that third party. So again, we can analyze the market mechanism here and show how the existence of positive externalities can create a market failure, give us an outcome from the market that isn't desirable from society's point of view. And we're going to do that looking again at benefits and costs. In terms of benefits, we have benefits to individuals, the consumers and producers of that activity. We have benefits to third party, external benefits. And then if we add those both together, we get the benefits to society. It's the private benefit plus the external benefit. And we're going to look at the concept here of marginal. So marginal private benefit, marginal external benefit, marginal social benefit. So the benefits that arise from one extra unit of production. We're also again going to consider the costs. We're going to consider the private costs to the individuals who are making the transaction, the buyer or the seller. We're going to consider the external cost, the cost of third parties, and we're going to also consider the social cost, which is the private cost plus the external cost. Again, we're going to be thinking about marginal concepts here, so the cost from each extra unit that is being produced. So let's move now to our analysis, and we're going to think maybe this time about, let's say, keeping bees. Why not? So keeping bees. So we're going to start off looking at the beekeepers, and the people who maybe perhaps buy the honey, the buyer and seller in this particular market. And if we think about the benefits first of all, then it's likely that from the first pot of honey that we produce, we're likely to get quite a high benefit. If it's the only one in existence, we will get quite a high price for that. By the time we produce the millionth pot of honey, then we might get quite a low benefit from doing that. In terms of the costs involved in keeping bees, again, the first few bees might be quite compliant, quite low costs. So we'd expect a low cost for the first initial few units. By the time we're trying to keep huge quantities of bees, actually the marginal cost starts to rise. If we look at the analysis here, we have the private benefits to the consumer or the supplier of honey, and we have the private cost to the supplier of honey. We'll come on to the social costs in a second. So, would it make sense for them to keep this first B? Well, this is the benefit they're going to get, and this is the cost. So the benefits far outweigh the cost. It makes sense. For this B here, does it make sense to keep them? Yes, the benefits far outweigh the costs, and so on. But for this B over here, actually the costs up here far outweigh the benefits. So it doesn't make sense for this particular B. So again, we would have a free market situation where they would produce up until this point. It makes sense to produce this particular quantity of bees because prior to that, to the left, the benefits exceed the costs. After that, to the right, the costs exceed the benefits. So let's add this analysis onto our diagram. We're going to get here the market equilibrium quantity, the quantity that we would get in the free market. Here it is. Okay. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the costs. So we're going to, and benefits to the third parties, the external benefits and costs. So we're going to assume here actually there are benefits here of keeping bees that go beyond just the seller of the honey or the consumer of the honey, but perhaps the farmer as well from having their crops pollinated. And people maybe, nature enthusiasts who like having bees around and all the good stuff they can do for the ecosystem. So we're going to add in these external benefits to third parties. And so as a result of adding on the external benefits to the private benefits, we're going to get the benefits to society as a whole. And this is the marginal social benefit. We're going to assume here that there are no external costs of people keeping bees. So you might argue, perhaps getting stung, a third party would be a cost, but we're here to make our analysis simple. We're going to assume there's no external costs or no negative costs to third parties of keeping bees. So therefore the social cost is the same as the private cost. The private cost plus a zero external cost equals the social cost. So now we have two curves again. We have the social cost and we have the social benefit. If we do our analysis again, we can see that would we want this B kept here, this first B? Well, here are the benefits and here are the costs. We can see that the benefits far outweigh the costs. So yes, we would want this one kept. What about this B here? Well, here are the benefits and here are the costs. So the benefits outweigh the costs. So yes, we would want that one kept. What about this B over here? Well, here are the costs and here are the benefits. So we can see that actually this time the costs outweigh the benefits. So no, we would not want that particular B being kept from society's point of view. In fact, we would want, from society's point of view, all the bees up till this quantity, because to the left, the benefits outweigh the cost, to the right, the costs outweigh the benefits. From society, looking just at the social benefits and the social costs. So let's now add in that analysis. And if we do so, we can see that we get a situation where the socially optimum output is the position where the social benefit equals the social cost, and that gives us this particular quantity. So what we can see is that from society's point of view, we would like Q soc, number of bees, but just left to the private individuals, the beekeepers, they would only give us Q market. So here we're getting less produced by the free market than we want from society's perspective, an underproduction. And this would apply to things like vaccination, education, walking to work, all those things, healthcare that we mentioned earlier on. So this illustrates here our positive externality gives rise to an underproduction. The market doesn't give us as much as we would want from society's point of view because it doesn't take into account, the free market doesn't take into account these external benefits. So we can take our analysis a little bit further and we can start to quantify the amount of net benefit that society is missing out on. So if I go up from the quantity that's actually being produced, Q market, I can then look to the right and say, right, these are all the bees in our example, or people getting degrees that haven't taken place or wouldn't take place in a free market scenario. And we can see for those people, there is a benefit that outweighs the cost that we are missing out on. So this value here, and then for this individual unit is this value here, and so on and so on. So if we were to quantify that area, the area of units that are not being produced, and the extent to which the benefits outweigh the costs of those units, we would get an area that looks like this blue triangle here. And this blue triangle here represents the net welfare loss, or the net welfare gain that potentially could be had if we were to produce more units. So this diagram here illustrates the impact of a positive externality. The existence of positive externalities means we have too little being produced by the free market compared to what we want from society's perspective. So this is an important diagram again. Let's take this one down in our notes. A good way to remember it is that the positive externality creates an area that looks a bit like a P for positive. So a positive externality is if the net social benefit is greater than the net private benefit, a positive externality exists. The socially optimum output is greater than the market output. So the free market may underproduce goods or services that possess positive externalities. So positive externalities will cause market failure. There is an underproduction of the good or service if left to the free market. The external benefits to society mean the socially optimal output is greater than the market output. Here again is an example of that diagram, the positive externality diagram, an important one to get our heads around and a very useful one to help us analyse why free markets don't always give us the best possible outcome. So in this video we've looked at what is meant by a positive externality and how we illustrate a positive externality using external benefits and marginal analysis. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.